The military is a great training ground for any business. And it's especially great for sales because at a young age, both officers and enlisted men and women are given a high degree of responsibility. And that's what sales is.
Welcome to Drop and Give Me 20, where you learn keys to entrepreneurial success as Lindsey interviews business owners with military backgrounds on what works and what doesn't. Listen as they focus on the stories, both challenges and wins, that military entrepreneurs have faced in growing their businesses.
Welcome to another episode of Drop and Give Me 20. I am your host, Lindsey, and I am so honored today to be joined by two of my friends. Mike Dugan is actually in the Hampton Roads, Virginia market with me, and Jen Griswold is up in Northern Virginia. Good morning to you both, and we're stuck in a rainstorm right now, so I hope you guys are staying dry. Mike, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Lindsey. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and I'm honored to be a guest.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. How are you holding up there?
I'm doing well, staying dry, and I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, we are excited to have you guys on. I say this every single episode. I know my listeners are probably like, enough with this. We get it. The 20 minutes flies by. And so I want to jump right in. You guys, we have a really interesting topic today, which we have to talk about as we run our businesses when we are in professions. And that is a 5-letter word, sales. It is one of my favorite things, but I know it doesn't come easy to a lot of folks. I have hand-selected you two because you both bring incredible insight to that topic. Just for introduction purposes for our listeners, Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I'm actually a former officer myself. I went to the Air Force Academy and had a background in aircraft maintenance for a good number of years before having children. And then I went into the reserves, which I've continued to do ever since. But I also became a stay-at-home mom, which was a new role for me and honestly kind of an uncomfortable one. So after about 3 years of staying home, I knew I wanted to get back to work, but I'm married to an active duty pilot. So I had to negotiate that dreadful, move every 2 years and try and keep a career. And I naively wanted a part-time 6-figure job, which I now look back on and giggle because it's pretty darn hard to find. But I'm stubborn, so I decided that I was going to make that job and start my own business. And through various businesses that I've started, I've learned the power of entrepreneurship. I've learned how it can empower, especially women, which is what I specialize in. And through a couple different businesses, starting with a home staging business and moving into a sales business, which we'll talk about with a skincare company, and then into what I'm doing now with Mission Entrepreneur. I'm just really trying to help women entrepreneurs and give back to the military. So I had the pleasure this last year of writing a book which focuses on military entrepreneurship, and that is truly my passion. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. And we will make sure in our show notes that we plug that book. I want to pick up a copy myself. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your service. And now let's hear from you, Mike. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a former Navy guy and spent about 8.5 years in the Navy flying the F-14 Tomcat, which is now retired. So I'm an old man at this point. Now an outsourced VP of sales. So I spent about 30 years in public companies, large Fortune 500 type companies. And in that capacity, we learn how to make our number, our revenue number, our forecast number every single quarter. And so that's very important in a public company because if you miss a quarter, you lose your job. God forbid you miss 2 quarters, the CEO loses his or her job. So we really need to find a way to ensure we meet our quarter over quarter, meet that number. And so we develop ways to do that. And now I'm bringing that knowledge to the small business community of Hampton Roads. My firm is Sales Acceleration, and we help small and medium-sized businesses beat their all-time sales records.
Awesome. I love it. We're talking a lot about sales today, as our listeners know. It's uncomfortable. What happened in our lives where the word sales makes people frazzle? Like, what is it? Was there a movie? What is that movie with?
Glenn Ross.
That's it. Did that?
They always BBC closing.
Yeah. What are your guys' feelings on, the word sales? Am I just making this up, or is it something that, frazzles people?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I don't think of myself as a salesperson. I actually use the term shares person because I think it feels better. I actually think that we shouldn't be so scared of sales because we're technically doing it all the time. I mean, I have 2 pre-teenage children and I'm selling them on the idea of healthy food and education and all those, exercise, all those kind of things. It's just that we don't get paid a lot of time for those kind of sales tactics. And I think when it comes to a sales or a paycheck, it tends to get into that icky, slimy, sleazy kind of connotation, which it doesn't need to. And I found that for me, the trick is always keeping the other person in mind. If you're always helping and you're genuinely putting something out there that they need, it doesn't have to feel so icky. So that was definitely how I overcame it, because I still to this day don't even like Girl Scout sales, like for the cookies. So I just buy them when my daughter has them. So I don't know, but I think that sharing seems a lot better to me than selling.
How about you, Mike? What are your thoughts on the word sales? Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, I think Jen makes some good points. I see sales as a noble endeavor. We are Sherpas. Sherpas are the people who assist folks wanting to climb Mount Everest. And so I see a customer at the bottom of the mountain wanting to get to the top of the mountain. Now, what we know is 85% of the sales process, arguably, now happens online. They only need a sales representative for that final 15% in most B2B sales and a lot of B2C sales as well. So they need a trusted advisor to get them on that final 15%. That's a noble endeavor because they probably can't get there without us. And if they get there without us and with someone else, we don't know what type of value they're getting. So I see it really as a noble endeavor. The second thing I see is that no one likes to be sold to. I don't like to be sold to. And when we supersede the buying process with our selling process and we go too fast, not at the buyer's speed, people back off and it feels a little bit gross and we want to get out of that situation. So the keys are, number one, regardless of what you know about advancing the sale, you can mess all that up and I can teach people a lot of things about the sales process. If you have the right intent, you're going to overcome all sins. Similar to parenting. We're going to make mistakes as parents, we all do. But if we have love in our heart, we're going to overcome a lot of those sins. So the intent to do the right thing for the person with a Sherpa mindset to bring them value and go at the buyer's pace, I think are the critical components that take sales from a nasty word with Vinny the used car salesman with the gold necklace around his neck into someone like Jen, the new trusted advisor that a consumer or a business needs to get them that final 15% to reach the mountaintop that they're seeking.
I need to go back to statistic you just shared with us. And I saw Jen's eyes, kind of open wide too. You said 85%. Can you repeat that? 85% of the sales process is formed online?
85% of the buying process occurs online.
Okay.
So that means that the customer, the consumer, the client, the business is 85% of the way to their buying decision before your phone ever rings or your email ever is received. And we need to understand that they've done plenty of due diligence. Now they're at a point where they need something we call insight. They've looked at all the various options and they say, wow, I don't know which one to pick here. They need someone who's been through this process time and time again. Likely it's the consumer's first time.
Right.
Professional salespeople, as Jen will tell you, I think as well, we've been through it many times. We can really provide insight to them and say, well, here are the strengths and weaknesses of each one, including our own, and allow them to make the decision. And I'll go back to another one of Jen's very good points. We need to be honest and candid. And if we don't have the right product, tell them. There are something called micro behaviors, and they come across in speech, and they also come across one-on-one visually. And the mind really can't interpret it, but we get a gut feeling something's not right. Yeah. The words aren't matching the behavior, and it makes people back off. So we need to be transparent, honest, and sincere. Again, intent being the key.
I have to go back to this concept of being a business owner, as many of our listeners are either thinking about becoming a business owner or they are currently a business owner. Can you teach sales to someone that, has never had any experience with it? Is that something, Jen, that you have found in your experience? Like if I came to you and I'm like, I just don't feel comfortable selling. Is that something you can teach?
Well, I'm actually in the business of doing that. So with my Rodan and Fields business, we have over 10,000 consultants on the team. And as I said, I was probably the most scared one to start. So we created this concept of if you connect an entrepreneur with their passion area, you can make the sales and learning the sales become easier. So for instance, in my case, I was really passionate about creating jobs for military spouses because I saw how hard that was. Moving every 2 years, even with a master's, I couldn't keep a good career progression. So I decided to share this idea of business. And because I have that woman in mind, I have that woman on the floor who was me 10 years ago, who had all these degrees, but was home with children, no husband home, and just kind of bummed out, on life and where I had landed. That's who I have in mind. So that makes learning sales much easier when you have that really big vision of where you're headed. And what I would tell you, I think my strategy has always been, and I think Mike might agree with this, is that being honest and being more you will help you build relationships it takes to sell.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people go awry. When they try to be somebody else, they try to take somebody else's words and it comes across as, unauthentic. That's when those, whatever you called the micro actions or whatever you said, really send the person running because they don't believe you. And now we really, because of social media, really rely on the recommendations of friends. And so relationships are even more important because if you're referring somebody, you want to be authentic. So I think that all comes into play, but anybody can learn sales if they believe in what they're doing and they have a big vision of where they're headed with it and they know they're helping people.
Mike, your thoughts? And can you teach sales to somebody?
Yeah, so absolutely you can, but I'll maybe wordsmith your statement a little bit. As long as your intent is good and you're putting their interest and their value ahead of your interest, things are going to work out. When you put your interest ahead of your customer's interest, we call that commission breath. And people can smell that and they run. And you need to take some Listerine, and the Listerine for commission breath is to put the client's interest ahead of yours. We all know salespeople want to close the deal. We know it's the end of the quarter. We know they're going to get a bonus. Folks can smell that. You can't have that come out. So what we try and do is, as opposed to teaching tricks and gambits of sales, we construct a sales process, normally 5 to 7 steps, where maybe 10 steps in each process of this 7 up here. And we have to complete all the steps in process 1 before we move to process 2, complete all the steps in process 2. Because, for example, process 2 could be discovery. And if we skip that, in step 5, when we do our presentation, we think the value they want is here, and their value is actually here, and we have a fly-through. So we teach a process which allows us to understand where people are, what step they're getting stuck on, and we simply concentrate on avoiding commission breath, bringing value, and the initial keys, which are relationship and trust. Nothing happens in a sale unless you've developed trust. Now, you can develop trust, some semblance of trust, arguably in a couple of minutes. If it's a larger sale, it's going to take more time. You can't develop trust unless you first develop a relationship. Develop the relationship, develop trust, be transparent, put their value ahead of yours so you don't have commission breath, have the right intent, and then just follow the process. And it will work. CEOs are the best salespeople. The reason CEOs have trouble is because they want people to do it like themselves, or they have no process. And then we've got Jane and Bill and Kate all doing something different, as opposed to a repeatable system where we can understand where people are having issues.
Love it. When Jen was talking, I wrote this down. And then Mike, when you were talking, I just wrote this down again. I started. We haven't said this, but in so many words, I say it, pain point. What is that pain point? What is the problem? What solution are we solving, or what benefit are we offering, right? So you guys said it in your own term. I use the word pain point for our clients. And I feel like that's absolutely something any business owner really needs to get down. I do firmly believe in getting that process down, Mike. You're absolutely right with that. Jen, you guys probably have a pretty solid flow, being such a successful business that you represent. I want to talk about some do's and don'ts. And these are kind of fun when we talk about sales. So I'm just going to do a round robin. Mike, give me a don't as it pertains to sales.
Don't, whether it's on your website or in person, talk about your product. People don't care about your product. People already know about your product to some degree, or else you wouldn't be in their office. You need to talk about and understand, to your point, their pain. What's bothering you? What are your issues? What are you trying to overcome? What are you working on right now? And those are the areas we need to understand and build a female side of a jigsaw puzzle so we can construct the identical fit for the male side of that jigsaw puzzle. And we call that providing value. I see it with manufacturers on their website. I see it when they come in and talk to people. And they're very proud of their knowledge and they're very proud of their product. And they talk about the product and the client goes to sleep. The client wants to talk about themselves and their issues. And we need to solve their issues. The product is secondary to that. And unless we understand their issues, they know we feel their pain points, they're not going to buy our product, which may solve their pain points.
Love it. What about you, Jen? You have a don't?
Yes, I would say don't let the no's bother you. So especially for women and for somebody starting up their business, the sales part is scary. And when you finally get the gumption to put your product or your service out there and you hear people say no to it, a lot of women shy away and they don't want to go back for more. And in sales, you have to understand that you're weeding out the people you can help and the people you can't. It doesn't mean that you're a bad business or a bad person because somebody told you no. I say no to things all the time that I eventually say yes to later. So don't let the no's bother you. And with that, keep track of what you're doing so that you can actually get systematic about how you're operating. Because a lot of sales is emotional intelligence and reading your own emotions as well as those around you. And like Mike said, really understanding how you can help somebody. But I found that when I track the numbers, the emotions go away because you start to learn a little bit about what your numbers are. How many people do I need to talk to get X number of sales or conversions, and then, move on from there. But don't give up because, don't let the no's bother you. Track the numbers and then don't give up, because if you give it enough time, you will create a system that you can make more predictable.
I love it. And I have one for the listeners that, my dad is a entrepreneur. He owned a number of auto parts stores, like 13 at the same time. So I grew up in sales. It was nothing for me to hear him every day. And something that he shared with me that I still push today and I still encourage my staff to do is make that big call or that burden, that big rock in your day. Do that first. Knock that out, because if you are going through your whole day going, I really got to call that lead. It's such a big client. I'm nervous. I'm going to take care of these little things first. You're just not going to have that momentum. So that's my sales tip is if you have a big lead, a big prospect, or even if you need to deliver bad news, that's a part of sales too. And then it's not only delivering bad news, but let's fix it together. Or here's my solution on this. Listen, your item didn't get delivered on time. I'm going to fix that for you. Here's what we're going to do, right? So that's my little takeaway when it comes to sales or just good business practice in general. Get that hard thing, that big elephant in the room out of the way, and then the rest of your day is a breeze. Trust me on it. It is just one of the things that I definitely bring home. I told you guys 20 minutes would go so fast, and I could share this time with you guys for, hours. Before we close up, Mike, do you have anything that you want to add to our listeners as it pertains to this topic of sales or relationships and how that pertains to military entrepreneurs?
Well, I'll tell you what, the military is a great training ground for any business. And it's especially great for sales because at a young age, both officers and enlisted men and women are given a high degree of responsibility. And that's what sales is. You're responsible for getting that person to the mountaintop. So don't shy away from sales. Remember, as Jen was alluding to, that half the ball game is sales is getting 50% of the people out of your pipeline who will never close. We don't call that failure. We call that cleaning up your pipeline. Can't take it personally. If you're a military person, think about sales. It's a noble endeavor. And whether you believe it or not, you're already trained.
Perfect. How about you, Jen? Any last thoughts for our listeners as it pertains to this topic? Any last closing thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I think what I would leave you with is that sales are really important to both you to survive in your business as well as to the customer for their needs. So don't shy away from going towards sales. Remember that you started your business for a specific reason. You have a specific, offering that you're giving the world that really can help them. So know that in order to get that out there, you just have to become skilled at sales. And it is a skill that gets better and better over time. The more you practice, the more you learn, it becomes easier. It flows off your tongue a little bit better. And we really need it. So you started for a specific reason. You have something special to offer to all of us. So the sales are the way to get there. So become an expert, learn how to love it, know that you have your vision on the other end of what you're trying to achieve so that it'll push you through the hard days, because there will be hard days sometimes. And just know that you're bettering the world with your services or your products.
Thank you, Jen. And how can our followers reach out to you if they had any questions? Where can we find you?
So I'll go ahead with that one. So you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, both under my name, Jen Griswold, or under Mission Entrepreneur, which is MSN Entrepreneur on our handles for both of those accounts.
Wonderful. And I'll share those. Mike, how about you? We need to have a sales regimen implemented for our company. We got to reach out to you. Where do we find you?
Easiest way is to go on LinkedIn and the easy name, Mike Dugan, Dugan, MBA, and I should pop right up.
You are so lucky to have such a nice, easy last name as somebody who people get it chopped up all the way around. Thank you guys so much for your time. And like I said, we could chat about this for a long time. And I really appreciate you both taking the time out of your day to come on the podcast and share your insights and your experiences with our listeners. In Germono Advertising Company, we help people with their marketing and advertising, especially very heavily in social media. And I tell our clients all the time, you are selling yourself. So if you ever have any questions about how we can help you with that, please don't hesitate to call me. Germono Advertising Company can be found at germono.com, and it's GERMONO. Of course, I bet if you type in Geronimo, that would probably populate our name too, which we heard. Please connect with Mike and Jen. They are an incredible resource to our military community. Thank you both for your service, for your time today, and I will be plugging all of your contact information within the show notes.
Thanks for listening to Drop and Give Me 20, brought to you by Germono Advertising Company in Norfolk, Virginia. Please visit our podcast in iTunes, click on subscribe, and leave us a review. Your support goes a long way. When you subscribe and leave reviews, it helps the guests on our show as well. Jump in and let us know what you think. You can also follow all of our guests on the Drop and Give Me 20 Facebook page. We have Instagram and Twitter. Those handles are Give Me 20 Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey Germono, and I appreciate you listening to the show.